this can end up being one of the most important things that happens to NBA hierarchy of the decade. Hello, welcome to Hoop Collective Podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on an emergency podcast here, which we've never done before over the sale of a team, to my knowledge. But this is one of the biggest sales of a sports teams in American sports history. Joining me from down the street from me at Gainbridge Fieldhouse is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, Brian. I would say it's definitionally the biggest, too.
Correct. Joining us from a few floors above him on the concourse in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, it's Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. As usual, I am well above Bontemps.
All right. So Shams Charania broke the news a short time ago that the Lakers were going to sell, from the Buss family, we're going to sell majority control to Mark Walter and the group led by TWG Capital, formerly known as Guggenheim Partners. Guggenheim Partners owns the Dodgers, among other things, including Chelsea FC. 2 or 3 years ago, they bought 27% of the Lakers. I'm going to go into aspects of the deal. The key is this is going to be for a valuation of $10 billion. That's the number you're going to see across the globe. $10 billion for majority control of a sports team. It won't actually be $10 billion. It'll be the percentage of $10 billion that they're going to buy. They own 27%. The Buss family owns 67%. So what I think is happening here, and this is all just now coming out, is the Mark Walter, who's the owner of the Dodgers, will buy a percentage to take him to the majority. What that percentage is, we'll see. My guess is that the Buss family will retain some percentage, and Shams says that Jeannie Buss will remain the governor. We'll see how long that'll be the case. There's a couple of things that I'm going to talk more about with the aspects of it, but Bontemps, for basketball fans, what is the most important thing here, and why are we doing this podcast right now?
Well, because it's a massive thing for basketball fans for the NBA, because for a long time, the Lakers would be, as you, I think, would have described them in the past, would be house poor, which is someone who bought an apartment a couple of years ago for the first time. I know what being house poor means, which means you own something, but you don't have a lot of actual cash. And the Lakers are a really rare team in modern sports, in that the Buss family, that's owned and operated the team for the last 45 years or so, basically has all their assets in the Lakers themselves. They're not, like Steve Ballmer obviously has all these other businesses. Same with, most of these other people that own these, whether it's NFL teams or NBA teams or whatever. Other than NFL teams, or this is the case in some of them, the vast majority of teams across other sports, it's a part of a bigger business empire. And for the Buss family, the Lakers have been the sun, the moon, and the stars for them on every front. And so that has led the Lakers to operate in a way that isn't what you'd necessarily expect of a team with their star power and brand and buying power in the marketplace. And if it's a similar situation, albeit in a different sport, that would happen when the McCourt sold the Los Angeles Dodgers to Todd Walter and the rest of the Guggenheim group several years ago. You don't have to follow much of baseball to know what's happened since then. The Dodgers have turned back into an absolute superpower after being a team that was fairly, a regular doormat in the National League. And the Lakers obviously have had some success getting LeBron there, won the title 5 years ago, made the conference finals a couple of years ago, but they have not, over the last 10 or 15 years, had the success that they did over their first 50, 60 years of the franchise's existence, when they only missed the playoffs a couple of times and were a consistent perennial championship contender. This move could potentially put the Lakers back into that kind of conversation, and could put the kind of financial horsepower we've seen behind, say, the Clippers across town, behind the biggest brand in the NBA and one of the biggest brands in all professional sports, and has a chance to do things for the Lakers that, they have not had the ability to do over the past 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, basically the Lakers have been the most glamorous mom and pop shop in the world for a while now. My question, and there's a lot of questions around this: why would Jeannie Buss remain the governor? What exactly does that look like if she doesn't have majority control, but she's the final decision maker? Like,
why does Wick Grousbach get to remain the governor of the Celtics? Because when you're selling, you get to set the parameters.
All right. Well,
Well,
I'm curious
and
to see how that plays out.
there's a lot of there's a lot of devils in the details in all these deals. You lived that through that to McMahon in Dallas, where Mark
Mhm.
Cuban famously said he is going to be fully in charge of basketball operations going forward forevermore. Obviously, he wasn't fully in charge of basketball operations basically immediately after selling the team. So let's just see. That stuff is, I think, not really very important to the discussion now and about what the impact of this is going to be going forward. That's more window dressing on the much bigger deal, which is that the Lakers now have as much horsepower behind them financially as any team in the league, as opposed to being at the other end of that spectrum for the past several years. And that means potentially a lot of different things.
Well, and it's great to have that horsepower, but as the Phoenix Suns and Matt Ishbia are finding out the hard way, spending more doesn't guarantee success, and in some ways, it can put handcuffs on you. But yeah, I mean, certainly luxury tax and things like that are not going to be of great concern to the Lakers moving forward. More just the aprons and all those sort of things.
Okay, so why they might sell now? There's a couple of reasons that I can surmise. One is obviously that the Celtics just sold and reset the market at $6 billion. Two, they entered in an agreement that would allow Wick Ruspach to be the governor, which is obviously something that I think Jeannie Buss wanted to do because that precedent was set. Three, the Lakers' primary source of income is their local TV deal. Every team in the league gets the same amount of money from the national TV contract. The Lakers get as much as the Grizzlies. They obviously do well with the crypto.com arena, but they don't own crypto.com arena. So, certainly while that is a cash cow building, they don't own it. So they make a lot of money off of their games, but there are plenty of teams out there that earn money off arena sales more than the Lakers do. It's one of the reasons why Steve Ballmer wanted his own arena with the Clippers, because they didn't own it either. Their local TV deal with Spectrum is the largest local television deal that's ever been done in the history of the NBA, but it pays them far and away. A couple of years ago, when I got the books from the NBA, books leaked to me, I looked at the Lakers' local media revenue, and the Lakers roughly made as much in 1 week of the season as the Grizzlies did for the whole year off their media deal. Now, subsequently, the Grizzlies have signed a new deal. I'm not saying that's still the case, but suffice to say, it was a massive, massive advantage. The Lakers, some teams that are rich, are driven by their arena. That's the Chase Center, for example, for the Warriors. That is a cash machine for them. Some are driven by their market, and some are driven by local media. But nobody.
And some are driven just by their owner, like the
Right.
Clippers
Like
with
Steve
Ballmer.
Ballmer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are driven by their owner.
And for the Lakers, that local television deal is why the Buss family could exist and why they could operate the team. And as we've talked about a bunch, I've reported on it a bunch, as the RSNs, the regional sports networks across the country, have all fallen off. Yes, the Spectrum deal is still in place with the Lakers and with the Dodgers, ironically, I believe. But at some point, paying an exorbitant number, even for Laker games, that's going to run out. And whenever that did run out, the Lakers are not going to be in a position to keep up with everybody else. Now that is irrelevant.
Okay, so the Lakers are still going to have to abide by the rules of the second apron, of the aprons. It's not, the thing that happened with the Dodgers when they bought them, the Dodgers were operating like a mom and pop shop in an uncapped league. And as soon as the Dodgers were owned by some of the deepest pocket people in sports, and uncapped, you all of a sudden see them, rolling off World Series titles and having the highest payroll. Chelsea FC, when the partners of the Guggenheim bought Chelsea FC, they set all kinds of records for how much money they were paying to buy players. In English soccer, the big money comes for the transfer fee. It's not like the Lakers are all of a sudden going to be able to spend vast amounts more than anybody else on players. I mean, in theory, you could build your roster up and just pay exorbitant luxury taxes, but they're not going to be able to there's rules in place. Where this makes a difference is that the Lakers, because under the buses, they operated, more, shallow than the other teams. They're going to be able to invest in infrastructure. They're going to be able to invest in more player comfort. They're going to be able to invest in more scouting. They're going to be able to invest in more player development. They're going to,
that's sorry. I thought you were stopping there.
Yeah,
That's the important thing to talk about. Like, yes, there's a salary cap in baseball. There's not a salary cap in baseball. There is in the NBA. But like, the comparison with the Dodgers is not about they went and spent money on Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and these guys. It's that they went out and hired Andrew Friedman, who is seen as arguably the best executive in the league, from the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that was built on winning on the margins, player development, building out a organization. He comes to Los Angeles, and the Dodgers have now the strongest and deepest organization in baseball. It's the same model of Steve Cohen when he bought the Mets for, again, another guy with $1 billion. He said, we need to model the Dodgers, not just in our ability to pay players, but also to pay for staff and all these other things to build out another franchise that had cash poor owners that was then bought by Steve Cohen. Same kind of thing. They want to build up the infrastructure around the team to keep up with the Clippers and the Warriors and all these other teams that have already been doing that for a very long time.
All right, so that's where the Lakers are gonna potentially change here. So, all right, do you want me to go into the deep nitty-gritty on this, or do you think I should not do that to our listeners?
I mean, if it's going to be window story time, I think the listeners always have window story time.
And you can't tease deep nitty gritty and then not do it.
Okay.
It also means he wants to do it. So now he's going to do it.
So the Lakers
please.
Before this deal, the Lakers are owned by three entities. The Buss Family Trust, which, as I said, owns about 67% before this. Mark Walters Group, which was called Guggenheim Partners, but now is called TWG Capital or TWG Global. And Patrick Soon-Shiong, who is at one time was the wealthiest man in California, a doctor who became very wealthy creating cancer drugs. He was the owner of the Los Angeles Times, amongst other things. Those were the three shareholders. Before the Dodgers bought this guy named Philip Anschutz owned the 27% stake that they previously had. Anschutz is a billionaire who's based in Colorado. He owns the Crypto.com arena. He owns all of LA Live. He owns the LA Kings. Why did he sell? Well, after the Clippers were just announced plans to build their arena, there was an opportunity for the Lakers, because the Lakers' lease was ending. The Lakers had an opportunity to go somewhere else. They elected to re-sign their lease. There was a time at which the owners of the Forum wanted the Lakers to go renovate the Forum and go back to the Forum. But the Lakers decided to re-sign their lease at then Staples Center about 3 years ago. As soon as the guy who owned the Clipper.com arena got them to re-up into a long lease, whatever it was, 20, 25 years, he immediately sold the team to the Guggenheim Partners. As soon as that happened, there was an understanding that maybe someday, if Jeannie Buss was ever going to sell, that they would have the opportunity to buy, because Philip Anschutz had in his deal a right of first refusal, that if you were going to sell, he had the right to buy. So if they were ever going to be sold, it was probably going to be to Philip Anschutz. But Philip Anschutz, I'm not sure he wanted to pay $10 billion. And he also, I believe, is over around 90 years old.
Just to be in the nitty gritty really quick, it's also the thing that Steve Pagliuca, the co-owner of the Celtics, did not have in his agreement as I believe, the second largest shareholder under Wyc Group's father, Irving, which is why when the Celtics were sold, even though Steve Pagliuca was trying to buy the team and had a pretty high bid, he was not the highest bid, and the team could get sold to somebody else. That was not the case here with the way this was set up.
Okay, that's right. It's important to note. So if the team was ever going to be sold, it was going to be sold to Mark Walter and his group. They were never in position not to buy. So it was understood that if the Buss is ever sold, that it would be to that group. It was just a matter of would they ever sell. There are 6 Buss children, okay? 4 children from Jerry Buss's first marriage, 2 children from his second marriage. They each have equal share. For them to sell, they had to have a majority of them. So there were some in that group who wanted to sell, some in that group who didn't want to sell. So I'm sure could be a whole movie made about how they came to the agreement to sell. The interesting thing that I want to bring up, you guys know that I'll just wait for that. So TWG Global two interesting things happened in April. One, Wawrinka got extended. That wasn't that big of a surprise because he had done the Luka Doncic trade. But oftentimes you will see before a sale, key people get extended. And then in late April, TWG Global announced a $15 billion fundraising effort. Fundraising sounds weird. Capital raising effort. And they wanted to create a fund that they would use to invest in sports. $10 billion of that money was invested by Mubadala Capital. Mubadala is Abu Dhabi. So as you guys have heard me talk about Abu Dhabi and Abu Dhabi's deep interest in investing in the NBA and American sport, Abu Dhabi, Mubadala Capital wouldn't be able to directly buy the Lakers, but certainly they could invest in something to buy the Lakers. And so, there's a lot, TWG Capital Global has a lot of investors, they control a lot of money. I'm not just saying that one piece of money goes to them.
I think we should say, just to be clear, Mark Walter had the money to buy the Lakers in this manner. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but it's worth pointing out that it's not necessarily a one-to-one thing. Like the fact that I think it's very relevant to point out that Abu Dhabi's involved, but the Dodgers financial engine is because these guys have a ton of money, and he just got an expansion Formula One team. He's invested, like you said, Todd Bowley, another guy with them, was behind Chelsea, spent all this money. They have a ton of money to spend. So,
in their press release from 2 months ago, they said that they plan to, quote, build up sizable stakes in a range of sports assets in the years leading up to this investment. So they announced a $15 billion raise with $10 billion from Abu Dhabi to invest in sports assets. And 2 months later, they buy the Lakers for $10 billion. I'm just pointing that out. You guys know how I feel about Abu Dhabi. I am very interested in how they're interested in sports and everything like that. Just thought I would point that out. To anybody
you also like the golf courses there.
Yeah. To anybody who might say that the reason that the Lakers are selling for this money is that it's Luka Doncic effect. Obviously, getting Luka Doncic is a big thing for the Lakers. It certainly brightened their short-term future. The Lakers were worth $10 billion before Luka Doncic. They're worth $10 billion after Luka Doncic. What you're buying is the brand. Again, on its face, the Lakers, they don't own their own arena. They don't control a big giant piece of real estate. They don't, have. They're just, you're buying the blue and the purple and gold. You're buying
those are all
the
reasons
brand.
why. That's right, and those are all reasons why the Lakers are being sold. Right? If the Lakers were owned by Steve Ballmer for the past 15 years, right? I'm not saying the on-court results would be better or worse. To your point, MacMahon, Matt Ishbia's got plenty of money. The Suns are not in a great spot, but they probably would own their own arena. They probably would have all these other kinds of things that they don't have, in part because the Lakers were not in position to do that kind of stuff. Now they're going to be in position to do whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, which is a much different reality, not just for the Lakers, but for the rest of the NBA, because the Lakers were already sitting there as the number one brand in the sport with all these built-in advantages behind them without any of this stuff. And now, like the Dodgers, again, to go back to when these same people bought it from the McCourt family, that's when things changed for the Dodgers. It's certainly very possible it could change that way for the Lakers.
So in the short term, I don't think it necessarily affects any of the Lakers' business. They're still not going to have cap space. They're still going to want to extend Luka Doncic. They're still going to be looking for a center. They still have, a couple of draft picks. They're still bound by the rules of the aprons. But on a grand scale, over the course of time, it could change the Lakers. If you are a Lakers fan, I would say that you should be very appreciative of the Buss years, because Jerry Buss turned them into this brand that's selling. And I think you should be very excited about the new horizons that deep-pocketed, newer, more savvy ownership could bring. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Well, it's also not new. They're not going to have new owner syndrome either. Like, you literally just have to look across town to Chavez Arena to see what happened with the Dodgers. It's like these guys came in, and again, it's not just as simple as they bought a bunch of players. Like, they built out as good an organization as there is in baseball, and probably arguably across sports when you look at how much they've invested across the board and all sorts of stuff. And if they do that with the Lakers, like you said, over the long haul, the Lakers will be better off. The Thunder, we're sitting here with the Thunder and Pacers in the NBA Finals, right? For the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the NBA title, they have to do a whole lot of things right, and a whole lot of things have to break their way, right? The Lakers, for better or worse, are starting the race way out in front of teams like the Thunder and Pacers. Like, they just are. So if you remove these issues that the Lakers have had, it gives you that much more of an ability to take advantage of the head start that the Lakers have, where over the past 15 years or so, they really haven't. And that's allowed them to stay in the same group as a lot of these other teams. Because again, if you go back in earlier times when the financial situations among the owners was not as big of a difference, it's not a coincidence the Lakers were always awesome. Like, there's a lot of reasons for that, and those reasons haven't gone away. So now one of the things that's been a potential hurdle for them is now cleared out of the way for them.
It is interesting though. Oklahoma City, obviously, one of the smallest. Is it the smallest market in the league? It's one of them.
I
Whatever.
think it's second, but either way, it's
Yeah,
in the running.
a very small market, but all the things you're talking about in terms of like what you can do with money. I mean, the Thunder have an extraordinarily deep staff. I mean, you talk about scouting, you talk about analytics, you talk about coaching, player development, commitment to their G League, a beautiful new basketball facility. As we're walking around Oklahoma City, the former convention center, the demolition has started on that because it's about to be this billion-dollar basketball palace that Clay Bennett, the Thunder's owner, contributed $50 million. The city's building this palace for them. So, for being a small market franchise, the Thunder have positioned themselves with the help of the city, but really Sam Presti's vision has positioned the Thunder to have an incredible amount of advantages. And this is kind of a move for the Lakers to try to catch up to itty bitty little OKC.
That's true. That is 100% true.
I'm not saying Sam Presti is showing up in LA, because I do not think that will be happening. But again, it is not a coincidence that when these guys bought the Dodgers, what did they do? They went and hired Andrew Friedman. For people who don't follow the Tampa Bay Rays, that was a team that was built on building through the draft, having a lot of young, cheap players. They didn't have a ton of payroll money. They were way behind the Yankees and these other teams, but they were competitive every year because they had an incredible infrastructure to bring in talent and bring in new ideas and ways to compete, despite not having that financial might behind them. And then you take a guy like that, you give him all the financial resources, and things look a lot different. So again, if you're a Laker fan, you want a blueprint for what this team is going to look like going forward. That, I think, is a blueprint of what you can expect them to do. Again, not based off of just pie in the sky thinking, but based off of literally what they did across town with another iconic team that was in need of some boosting up from a financial backing standpoint, and what they did after they took over.
So yesterday, Oklahoma City announced their lease extension with the Thunder. It's been in the works for a while after they got the arena approved, but I'm sure they took advantage of it to announce it during the finals. But they actually signed it yesterday. Keeps them in Oklahoma City through 2053, I think. And they were touting that Clay Bennett, the owner, is one of the greatest Oklahomans of his generation. It's not like anything would happen, but they were touting how that the fee for them ever to move was $1 billion. That it was, all this is happening, and and the Thunder aren't going anywhere. It's going to be $1 billion. And I kind of smiled because it sounds like a lot of money, but in all honesty, if to move a team $1 billion is really, depending on where you're moving them, it's not overcomable in 2025, much less 2045. I don't want to set anything off. I'm just saying the OKC was like $1 billion. Like, no way this team's going anywhere. We know they're not going anywhere, but
right,
$1 billion is to buy 10% of the Lakers.
And they've come a long way from the days of having a facility that smelled like burning dog food.
Anyway, all right. This can end up being one of the most important things that happens to NBA hierarchy of the decade. So, or not.
Well, there's one other thing we should discuss really quick before we go, which is we talked about this with the Celtics sale. The reason Adam Silver was waiting to move forward with expansion, which he said at his pre-game one annual press conference, that it's going to be on the agenda at next month's Board of Governors meeting in Las Vegas, and that he all but confirmed it's going to be recommended to committee, which is the next step in the process of having expansion come to the NBA, was waiting to see that $6 billion valuation for the Lakers, a number that you heard around the league as a number
for the Celtics.
For the Celtics, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was a number that you heard around the league, was one the league hoped to get and would help to set the groundwork for what the price would be for potential future expansion teams. Obviously, future expansion teams are not the Los Angeles Lakers, but it does not hurt that the previous record for purchasing an NBA team, which was 66% higher than the prior bid, was just eclipsed by a bid that was 66% higher than that. So when you think about it that way, if you're looking forward to expansion in the coming years, and you're a fan, I would assume most particularly in Seattle and Las Vegas, I would feel pretty good about the idea that this is only going to add fuel to the fire of expansion coming to the NBA. Because this is a reminder, let's say those two teams go for an average of $6 billion. That's $12 billion total. That number does not get split with the players. That gets split with the 30 current owners. That means every current owner would get a check for $400 million. So when you start talking with numbers like that, that is where expansion comes into play. And again, if you're a Sonics fan in particular, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Seattle who are not very happy that the Oklahoma City Thunder are 1 win away from winning their first NBA championship since moving the team there back in 2008. But today is a day where I think if you're a Sonics fan, you got closer to getting a team in Seattle again. And so, if nothing else, you could take heart in that.
All right. Well, more to come on this. Thank you for listening to Hoop Collective. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Jackson for scrambling here in the middle of a hellacious storm in Indianapolis. We will talk to you soon.
Yep, Thunder was rolling through Indianapolis today. Adios, amigos.